So Tim, what are some of the tools and systems that have been adopted in the public sector recently?
I mean, so the obvious ones are things like, your 365, your Zooms, and all those lovely tools, which we've all, as Stuart's just said, all got quite familiar with. And as one of my colleagues likes to say, he's sorry about the pain he's landed on the 140,000 people we've rolled Teams out to, I think it is, because the amount of time everyone's sat on Teams is just incredible. I think it's worth just stepping back from the technical question a bit, and just going back to one of the questions you asked Stuart a minute ago around what's the impact been, and Stuart gave very good articulation of what that's meant from a customer perspective, which I totally agree with. But what's really interesting is the impact on staff as well. So if you look at there's some hopefully useful stats which I've sort of made a note of. 60% of us are feeling less connected at work. For obvious reasons, we're now remote from each other. 70% higher levels of stress than pre-COVID. 56% find the job more demanding. We're spending an hour a day searching for stuff. Now, if you look at a 3,000 person organisation, that's something like 90,000 hours of time, which is wasted searching. We've got a 40% decrease in mental health, so positive mental health, and an 85% decrease in well-being. And if you think of all those things together, yes, it's been fantastic that we've got Zoom working, we've got Teams working, we've done bits and bobs in 365, but actually we now need to fundamentally change the thinking as people are starting to go back to work. While things like Teams have been rolled out, it's what does the new working norm look like? So when people are going back to the office, what does the new space look like? And James, I think you're talking about the reconfigured office, but people are still, we're going to have a completely new working way of working. So things like, how do you deal with hybrid meetings? How do you deal with new desk space, desk ratios, which will be much more crammed in theory because people have got rid of office space. But then how do you really start thinking and understanding how your organisation is, all the employees are working, what's their well-being like, et cetera, and we're seeing a big push for tools such as Viva, which is in again the Microsoft stack. So things like Viva Connections, which basically allows you to connect across your authority. It does things like allows you to have a personalised intranet, so all the content which is local to you and relevant to you comes to you. How do you lose that? How do you get the understanding of where the pressure points are in the organisation? So I don't know if you've seen the workplace analytics which comes in Viva. It's staggering, the data it can tell you. It can tell you who's being overworked, who's been stressed. It can tell you how much a cabinet meetings cost in preparation time, but it's giving you a whole bunch of data points which you've never had before, and I think are absolutely critical if you want to change the way the organisation works. There are the other thing which I think is a real struggle is if you've got a new way of working, which is very much hybrid. I suspect everyone's only going to ever come back to 2 to 3 days a week in the office, if that. But you've got young people trying to come into the workforce. It's exceptionally hard for them to learn. So how do you get them bought into this journey as well? How do you help them with the learning? How do you get them to understand what work ethics are? Stuart, I probably don't want to speak to you, but we're old. And young people who come in have got a totally different way of thinking and being, and it's very hard if they don't know what a working environment's like. It's a real struggle for them to get on board. So I think it's one of those ones where you need to sort of step back and look at what's the overarching picture looking like, and it's actually a much more stressy world than it was before.
So thanks for that, Stuart. Anything to add to that, and particular, what are we using? What we're using now that will be continue to be used, do you think, as we kind of get into this new normal, this hybrid?
I'm just struggling to recover from the fact that I've just been called old, because definitely at the beginning of this COVID experience, I was young, Tim. I don't know what's happened in the last 18 months. It must have been stressful, mustn't it? Yeah. Or I definitely had a really tough paper round, Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I agree with Tim. We're coming on to some of the issues later, aren't we, about training and things like that. I think that structuring work and how work's going to be structured. The reality is you know, we both talked about the Microsoft stack. Talk about any stack. There is a tool which replaces any human activity almost that we did in the workplace. There's something which will replicate that for us somewhere. You can go and find it in an app store somewhere. Okay, so that's all possible. But actually, it's really hard to pull that together and then to structure it. So actually, the soft stuff in the office, which was you went to the coffee machine and had a chat, or you watched how hard that person who just joined the organization was working, or you leant over and looked at their screen and said, I wouldn't quite do it like that. What we do is this. All that informal stuff is really, really hard to do. And in some ways, the digital world's different. You have to formalize the soft stuff because the hard stuff's already there. Okay, so I mean, I think that's, you know, I think that's there. And the other thing I would say, which really I think we're going to see a lot of, is we're going to have seen a lot of bad behavior. What do I mean by that? What I mean is lots of implementation of apps which have happened really, really quickly to deal with X problem and Y problem, and lots of data all over the place. So lots of the problems we were trying to get away from will have been exacerbated by the fact that we won't have information. You know, you were talking about searching, Tim. We won't have the data in the place we want it to be. And we'll have lots of conversations going on somewhere where we don't want them to go on, and so on and so forth. So I think we'll have that going on too.
Thanks. We touched on this earlier, but how do we support trainees and apprentices who are missing out on learning? We you know, that observation, that shadowing. Now, what can we do about the next generation of the workforce coming in from home? Have a Stuart or Tim who wants to jump in there.
I'll jump in, Tim, because I've almost done some of it in my last one. I mean, I've not got that much more to say other almost what I've already said. The tools are there. Okay, so if you want to share screens with someone, or you want to have a one-on-one meeting, or you want to set up a meeting with someone, you know, immediately because you've seen something they've done, or you're sharing a screen or whatever. There are so many tools out there that can support all the things you would want to do to support someone who's training alongside you, who's working alongside you. The problem is what you have to do is formalize a process to actually bring all of that together. That would be my thing. I mean, you know, we're doubting again whether we're going to go back into an office at all, actually, because actually we're much more efficient with people working from home and controlling that. But it's been a completely different way of working, which we've managed to adapt to. And I think that's the point, really, is that you know, all that stuff that was done informally has all the tools are there to do it, but you have to formalize the way that you structure it. I don't know if I've frozen or I've shocked the whole.
I definitely froze.
Ah,
so that might have been it. I was shocked by what you were saying. Tim, do you want to jump in now?
You're on mute, Tim.
Sorry, I'm unmuted. Yeah, no, totally agree, Stuart. The thing to bear in mind is the young people are far more used to. They are all spend their lives communicating with their friends via Discord and TikTok and all sorts of other bits and bobs, and Instagram and this, that, and the other. So they're actually very used to working in this way. This is actually their norm. It's not our norm. What they don't get, though, is that one-to-one time, that sort of education on the way of working, etc., which I think that's the one thing you can't fix with technology in this particular instance. You do need that time. You need to come into the office. We need to work together as a team. There are certain things like, you know, standing around a whiteboard just once in a while to do X, Y, Z is, I think, a critical missing part. But in general, I think this new world of working remotely using technology is very native and natural to young people. My worry is just how do you get them brought into being as part of a team, etc. If you've never met the other person, it's very, very hard. I mean, I think we call it flex agile working. It's come in when you need to come in, but we're encouraging teams to come in, meet, mingle, get to know each other, which you just can't do properly over Teams or Zoom or what have you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, let's hope my connection's holding up. So next question is, how can the public sector take advantage of a data-rich economy to predict behaviour? and informed decision making as we settle into the new normal and remote hybrid working. Tim, do you want to go in on that one?
Stuart?
Yeah,
Yeah,
fine.
cool. So data is the probably the biggest topic or biggest thing people are grappling with at the moment. Everyone knows the way to, if you want to fundamentally flip the business model of a council, you've got to get ahead of the demand, and you've got to do what the Ubers, etc., of this world have done. And I'm not saying become an Uber or an Amazon, because that's not the business you are. Local authorities are very complex businesses, but it is that thinking. And if you can get ahead of the demand curve in, say, adult social care, understand who is likely to need what care and when, understand using maths and data to work out what the right intervention models are, which in the first port should be your neighbours, your family, friends, and make your make those people who need the support owners of that data and that network of people around them, and then the council becomes the sort of second port of call. And then using data to understand what the right interventions are and how to elongate someone's life at home, for example, from an adult social care perspective, as long as possible. And data just unlocks all of that. And I genuinely believe you can make a massive, massive difference to the cost base of an authority and the way the authority operates if you can get ahead of the demand. Doesn't matter whether it's adults, children's, or anything else, quite frankly. We are working with lots of authorities in this space, from BCP, who is a newly formed combined authority from 3 and a bit authorities into one. And their ambition is to be an insight-led authority, and so that essentially is understanding what the data is, understanding where the demand is, and finding ways to get ahead of it using data science. Massive for the sector, and I think it's the biggest. I think it'll be the biggest transformation of the sector, or enablement, or enabling capability to transform the sector that we've seen in an awful long time. Stuart, I don't know what your thoughts are in that space.
No. I mean, I completely agree. I'm going to come at it in a slightly different way to answer some of the questions around it, but I completely agree. I mean, in terms of, if I could recruit another 10 Power BI developers next week, I'd recruit them. Every single requirement that you see uses the word data, driven by data. Organizations want to be driven by data, absolutely. And it's absolutely vital. I mean, and you can see it's going to drive the agenda. And as you said, really, better forecasting, better understanding, but actually I still think there are some, so I say how important it is. I say better forecasting, better understanding, critically important. I think there are still some significant issues in terms of getting that data and bringing that data together. And I think we're still seeing organizations which still, there are many organizations who've managed to bring it together and get one source, but that there are lots of organizations who are still with multiple sources of data, all in different formats, and bringing it together is a significant challenge. I think the other thing about data is then linking it to COVID, and actually I think so. And again, I talked earlier about the number of activities which in a innovative way have been shared between organizations during the COVID crisis. Okay, so organizations have crossed boundaries and come together to deliver a service or to manage a situation in a crisis. Okay, and they've done that incredibly well and must be applauded for that. Yeah, but it's really interesting that pandemic allowed them probably to I'm not saying break rules, but what I'm saying is actually that drive for change meant that a lot of the caution which would have existed previously to organizations to work like that and to share that kind of data just disappeared, because actually, look, we're in a pandemic. We've just got to do this, and so that's what happened. I think that actually which has been fantastic, but I think we are going to come back to the new normal is going to be, we still have the data rules that we had previously. And we still actually have citizens who want us to respect our data and to respect the information that they have on us and the way that we use that data. And I think we might actually, personally feel have to take a little bit of a pause and make sure that actually that new normal through COVID doesn't continue in terms of the way that we look at data. I think we should be quite careful about that as we move forward, because I can see some issues with that. What some of the use cases I've seen about the way that data is being used actually make me quite nervous, actually, on behalf of the citizen. So I think we're going to have to be quite careful about that.
Thanks, Stuart. Before we move on to our sort of final question, is there anybody in the audience who wants to say anything or ask a question? You can use the raise your hand. You can jump in, and if not, then we'll get to the last one. No, okay. So the final question is that what's the general view across the local authorities then that you've been speaking to about returning to work? Has everyone gone down the road of this new normal and thinking about the hybrid working arrangements, or is there resistance or a plan to well when this is over we'll go back to where it was before? Tim, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so I don't think any authority is going to go back to what they were doing before. We're working with quite a few authorities to look at their working arrangements, both from a practical office space. What does it mean configuration-wise? What does it mean from a technology-wise? I don't know any authorities rushing back at pace. Quite a few have still said, hold off. I think most are starting to come back now. I don't know any authority who's gone full pace back and said everyone has to be in the office. I think the general consensus is people will be back 1 to 2 days a week, 1 to 2, maybe 3 days a week. I don't think that's going to change for quite some time. COVID's been exceptionally helpful for some people. So, if you're fortunate, like probably most of us on this call, you've got a house with a garden, you can spend time with your, it's been fantastic for me. I've got time to spend, I know who my children are now, I can just about get the names right, which is good. But for many others, that's not been a luxury. If you're stuck in a flat or whatever, there's too many people sat on beds still doing their work from, sat on their bed, etc. So while I don't think anyone's going to want to come back 5 days a week, and I've certainly not seen any authority edict it, I think you will find some people naturally will come back 5 days a week, but the vast majority still will be down to 1 to 2 days a week for good, I think. I mean, I'm sitting in my office today. I'm actually in the office, and every time I've been in the office, there's been 2 or 3 younger people who I've seen every single time. It's because, well, they're stuck in a flat otherwise all day long. They can't get out, and this is their way of getting out and socialising.
Indeed. Stuart, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Tim. Not a great deal to add. I agree with the point about young people, but I don't see anybody driving everybody back to the office at the moment. It's it really is a hybrid arrangement and some mixture of that hybrid arrangement. So no, I don't see anybody driving everybody back to the office at the moment. Yeah,
I mean, from my point of view, my team, we're kind of totally remote, but anybody who wants to go to the office can do. But we're not mandating. Certainly, we've got the tools in place to have that collaboration and working remotely, and that seems to be working for us. But yeah, but you do miss that interaction, that social side, that the informal stuff.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the other thing that's worth reflecting on, going back to some of those stats I said earlier on, is how do you actually help people with their mental well-being and that sort of personal health? So we've introduced things like the purple hour at lunchtime. It forces people, I'm not saying I never do, but we're not meant to put meetings in during between 12 and 1 to make people sure people actually get those breaks they need, because this hybrid work environment is going to stay like this for a long time, I think. So we need to think of both sides, both in the office and at home.
Right. Thank you both. That brings us to the end of our session today. I'd like to thank Stuart and Tim. You've been fantastic panelists. Thank you for your excellent insights you're sharing. And if you'd like to learn more or discuss anything you've heard today, please reach out through the contact details that Matt will have provided. And we're happy to facilitate an introduction for you.